Okay, so the reality in life is that nobody triggers us more than a significant other or a child. And so recently I was asked this question, like, how do I move past trauma if my significant other is triggering me? And how do I communicate this when I'm being triggered? So this is a great and important question. The first thing I want to make clear is that when you're triggered, is the hardest time to communicate anything. So we'll talk about when the best time is at the end of this video. Now, how to tell a significant other in regards to your trigger is going to depend on how safe is the relationship you have with your significant other. So I'm going to explain a way to work with this with somebody that is toxic and a way to work with this with somebody that is not toxic. So let's say your significant other is not a safe person. You don't feel safe to be yourself. You don't feel safe as if you can share your feelings because maybe you're told you're too sensitive or you're making things up or you're invalidated. If you have somebody that does that to you, then trying to get through to them in hopes that they change so that you can feel safe and not triggered. And with toxic people, it doesn't work. Because the more you tell them, this hurts me or this affects me, the more they file this away like, oh, when I'm not feeling good about myself, I can do that, make him or her feel this way, and I feel more powerful. That's how toxic people interpret when you're sharing your feelings. And so if it's a toxic person, there are three things that you're going to want to do. The first is uncover what that trigger is. Recently in the School of Transformation, one member described triggers or emotional flashbacks as a lie getting turned on inside your body. I absolutely love that description, but that's exactly what it is. A lie is getting turned on inside your body, and until we can uncover what that is, we can't work with it. The lie is going to be a painful belief that you have about yourself. It's not going to be about the other person. Maybe they do something that triggers you. And so what you want to ask yourself is when they do that, that means I am what? It might be I'm not safe, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm less than. Once you uncover what that lie is, you need to work with it with your mind and your body. The mind, by asking yourself, do I choose to believe this? Do I choose to mean his behavior means I am bad? No. So you first want to understand that whatever you learned in the past is no longer true in your present life. Then the other part of working with it with your body is the activation that that lie turns on inside your body. In fact, it's that activation that when you're triggered is flinging you into a trauma response of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I won't lie, working with that activation, oftentimes we have to do with support. So having a trauma therapist or a somatic experiencing practitioner to help you to keep one foot in that activation and one foot in the present is super helpful. Once you've been with that activation and you start realizing its story, you can then help your nervous system to realize that, yes, that activation comes from something you experienced and it's no longer happening now. What your significant other is doing is reminding your nervous system of something, but it's not the same. And so what you're doing with these three steps is you are updating your nervous system and stepping in as the healer of your triggers instead of hoping the other person gets it so that they stop triggering you. So much more empowering. Now, if you have a healthy significant other, then you still want to do those three steps because that's how we heal from unhealed trauma from the past. That's how we update our nervous system. But now you have the benefit of talking to your significant other. And so in the beginning, I mentioned when. When we're triggered, it's really hard. I literally remember being triggered in the car because the car was used as a place of abuse. And so when I was remarried, sometimes I would just be in the car and all of a sudden I'd be checked out. I'd be frozen. And I remember my husband like, come back to me. And he would try so hard to help me to come out of that freeze state. And I finally had to tell him that until my body can start feeling safe, no amount of nudging from him was bringing me out of the freeze. So I had to explain what is helpful for me is check in on me, see how I'm doing, and just let me know that you're here, that you love me, that I'm safe. And once the activation has settled, I will emerge from the freeze and we can talk about it. But you are triggered is the worst time to communicate because your conscious self is not there. If you're in one of your trauma responses of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, your trauma responses turn off your prefrontal cortex and, in essence, your conscious self. Having these conversations when you're not triggered and explaining to your significant other is helpful. But you're still doing the work of healing your trigger, because imagine if I have a splinter in my arm and I try to get my significant other to never touch my arm in that space. Well, they might try their best, and every now and then they're going to slip and they're going to accidentally touch my arm, and then I'm going to be flung into pain. Well, I could do that by trying to get them to never touch my arm, or I can remove the splinter. And then when they touch my arm, I might be like, hey, what are you doing? But it's not going to fling me into pain. And it's the same thing with a person's actions. A significant other at times is going to say things that may cause us pain or sadness. But rather than being flung into those emotions from a child mind state, we'll be able to keep one foot with our adult self. So it's a very long explanation, but this work takes time. This work is deep. But yeah, I hope that was helpful.